Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome to the evening session of the City Council meeting. The meeting is now called to order, and I'd like to ask the City Clerk to call the roll.
All council members present.
All right, are there any agenda changes for the staff?
Yes, sir.
Council members, do you have any agenda changes? So that brings us to public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency, to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on tonight's agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time that the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, council, authority, and agency members may briefly respond to statements or questions. An item may be placed on a future agenda. Belinda, do we have any cards under public comment?
We have no cards under public comment.
All right, then we'll get to the main event. Item 100 is a public hearing on review of draft City Council district maps for district elections. I'd like to ask staff to please introduce this item.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is Brett Channing. I'm the Deputy Director of Administrative Services. And tonight is the next big step in this district election process. As you know, we started this process about 2 years ago, and we are here tonight to discuss the draft City Council maps that have been submitted from the public and created by the city's hired demographer. Speaking of the city's hired demographer, I would like to introduce Douglas Johnson, President of National Demographics Corporation. He's here tonight, and he's going to go over these maps and help direct the City Council to the next step of the process. I also want to acknowledge that we have here tonight Jody Monahan from the Institute of Local Government. She helped facilitate all 5 of our community workshops that we had over the last few months, and she'd be able to answer any questions that may come up about those. So, Doug, why don't you take it away?
Hey, Doug, welcome.
Thank you. Pardon me. It's a pleasure to be back with you again. Jump into the slides here. Okay. Just as you know well, but just to recap for some of the public that may not know the schedule quite so in detail, the city has done extensive is not capture quite the breadth of how much outreach the city has done, but it's been very admirable as the city has passed the charter review or charter revision, held public hearings all through January, February, March. We've been doing efforts to work with the community, with ILG, to get the word out so people know what this is all about, how they can participate, and how they can share their own map ideas. And as you no doubt know in detail, the community has responded. We certainly have no shortage of map ideas that have come in from the public. And so it's been great to see both that outreach from the city and the public responding and really engaging in this process. The last step, as many of the public members hopefully attended, was in April 18th when we held a community workshop to have a little more informal setting where we could get feedback from the public and talk about the different maps that have come in and what the differences are between them. Tonight, obviously, is a big council hearing where we're really looking in detail at the draft maps for the first time formally in a formal hearing. There will be another formal council hearing on May 23rd, and it's possible that evening, if the council is comfortable at that point, where there could be an introduction of the ordinance that would implement the maps. And that introduction of the ordinance is really when the council is choosing the map. Then, as with all ordinances, there needs to be a second reading, so that second reading would be in June 13th. Or if the council wants a little more time, May 23rd would just be a hearing. June 13th would then be introduction of the ordinance, and June 27th would be adoption. November, of course, the good thing is we're well in advance of the deadlines. November 2018 would be the first district election, along with the citywide mayoral election, which will stay citywide. And then the remaining districts would hold their first election in 2020. Just very briefly, so everyone's on the same page, the criteria and the rules for drawing the lines. We have federal laws that I refer to as the must-dos. We must have essentially equal population, plus or minus 5% at the most of the target population. We must avoid racial gerrymandering, so we can't draw the lines where race is the predominant factor. And we must comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. And all the maps that we'll show you tonight follow all three of these requirements. Where the decisions really come down for the public and the council are in the balancing of what we call traditional redistricting principles. It's impossible to meet every one of these goals. So the decision is which map best balances these goals. First is respecting communities of interest. Getting the public input on what are their neighborhoods and what are their communities, and we've had fantastic input on that. And then I want to note, too, that respecting community of interest means following its wishes, whether it wants to be all in one seat or have two seats representing it. And the council, when it adopted the criteria, added the goal of, for example, downtown should have multiple council members who answer that area and are responsible for that area. So one of our goals is to respect that neighborhood by actually drawing multiple districts into it. We also want the lines to be compact and contiguous, follow major boundaries. That's really so they're easy for the voters to understand. And then to use whole census blocks so that we get accurate population numbers. At the bottom, some quick stats. We had 44 maps of neighborhoods. So drawing communities of interest maps drawn by the public at our various workshops and forums. That's more than we've ever had on that front, so congrats on that. And we've done over 150 of these projects, so that's drawing from a pretty big pool. We had 18 citywide maps where they drew all 4 districts, and those districts all met the legal requirements. And then, of course, we drew 3 maps to add to that mix, and then had well over 150 comments from the public on what they like or dislike about maps or endorsing different maps. So it's been a very good process of getting the public involved, and the public has responded. Now the challenge is we have all these maps. How do we get to a decision? And so what we've done in our review, and we've done this a number of times with other jurisdictions that had lots of maps submitted, is to try to identify kind of key differentiations between the maps. And in this city, we've identified really 3 different pools of maps, where the maps follow generally the same idea. And I'll go through those. Our recommendation is that the council select 1 or 2 focus maps from each pool, each of those 3 categories. And the idea here is that we want detailed public comment. It's a lot easier for a member of the public to come to the next hearing knowing which 3 or 4 or 5 maps the council's really focused on than it is for a member of the public to prepare comments on 21 different maps and try to get that into the time limits. So that's why we recommend that the council narrow the choices down. It's not a final decision, but it's a very useful decision. The 3 categories, I'll just briefly mention them. They really are driven by the east and west. There's a lot of variation in the middle, but the eastern and western districts really drive our categories. And then there are subcategories within for the central area. So there's one group that had really the entire west part of the city in one district and the entire east part of the city in one district. There's a second group that I'll show you in a second that had the entire west side united, and then the east side is divided between 2 areas, generally around Granite Hills. And then there's a third group that splits the west side into 2 seats. So these are just samples. I use the NBC maps to avoid any semblance of favoritism in any one public map. These are not necessarily favorite maps. I'm just showing what was I looking at when I came up with those categories. So United West, you can see in this group, District 1 covers certainly everything west of the freeway and then up to the airport. And then there's a lot of variation in the middle. And all in Group 1, they always unite the entire east side in a second district. Again, the exact borders in the middle vary a lot from map to map. In the second group, you get a united west, but in some version, the east side is divided. This yellow is an extreme map where it's divided 3 ways. Most of them it's divided 2 ways. And then you get a map. The third group has a divided west where 1 and 2 or 1 and 4 are really north and south of each other. And all of those maps have a divided east. There's no map in Group 3 that has the east side of town united. So these are the 3 general groups. But of course, there's a lot of variation in those. Starting with the first group, so all 9 of these maps have the west united in 1 district and have the east united in 1 district. So then the question becomes, what happens in the middle? And where are those borders between them? Roughly speaking, you have 3 at the top, where the central districts are really vertical. They're vertically divided. So you can see in the ADAR map, all 4 seats are vertical. Then you get the Johnson map, not me, it's another Johnson, and this is fairly common, where 1 is more northern, and the east and west districts actually meet above the freeway, and the other 2 districts are entirely south of the freeway. And then you get another version where there's 1 vertical district, 1 district that's south of the freeway, and then the western district actually wraps around a bit. So spending a little more time on this, we'll spend less time map by map as we go along. So that's one arrangement within Group 1, is a vertical central alignment. The other approach that we saw is kind of a common theme is horizontal districts in the middle. Either 2 districts in the middle that are complete, both south of the freeway, or 2 districts in the middle that take up the entire central from north to south edge of the city. Obviously, the difference is, does the western district come in across the freeway in the south, or does it come farther across in the north? Actually, this map, the Serco and Cajon, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, maps, are actually population-wise fairly similar. This one comes up and puts the airport into that north central seat. That's not a lot of people in that arm that's going up to the airport. Population-wise, they're similar. The main difference is the airport treatment between those 2 maps. And then there's a third group that kind of is a mix of the central districts. So we have the Schaefer map, where 1 of the central districts wraps around the other one. We have the Tuama map, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing some of these names, where you have a very compact orange district in the middle, and then the pink district that's really the freeway, and then below there. And then the NDC orange map, which is kind of a mix. It's actually fairly similar to the Tuama map, except that it moves the compact district south, and then there's kind of the L-shaped district to the east of it. So all these maps are in Group 1. You can see even in our group there's variation, but the idea is this is one different group, one distinct group that has those east and west bounds controlling it. Our suggestion, and there's no right answer to this, but our suggestion in terms of maps that kind of capture the feel and the breadth while still achieving the goal of multiple districts downtown, which was a big focus of what I was looking at, and trying to be relatively compact, would be to go forward with the Serco and the orange map. And one of the things to note, it's not that NDC's maps are because we have more skills or anything like that. It's because we drew last. So we got to look at all the public's maps, and we saw all these 8 other maps and got to take those pieces together and try to put them together. So that's one of the reasons that we're kind of capturing a lot of the feel from the other maps and a lot of the input from the other maps together. Again, lots of options here, but those would be our 2 suggested maps to go forward to, subject to public comment and your preference. In the second group, there are fewer maps. Really 2 groups here. And again, this is a group where the west is all united in 1 district. The east is divided into kind of a northern and southern, or northeast and southeast district. 4 of them, the division is along Mollison. It's a very common border. The question is, do they follow Mollison all the way up to the freeway, as they do in the, forgive me for the pronunciations, Kalinowski map? Probably getting that wrong. Or following it part way up, really to the edge of downtown, and then bringing the northeast seat in to get a piece of downtown, which these other 3 do. So there's following Mollison, or the other variants, there's a lot of variety in the other three. There's the NDC yellow map, which really has 3 horizontal districts across the rest of the city. The topping map, which has a north-east seat that comes very far across and gets a lot of that north part of the city together. Or the Adler map, which really is kind of 4 pie shapes, dividing the city up. So a little less variety here in this group. Our suggestion would be to go with the Davidson and Adler maps. Not necessarily, again, these recommendations are not necessarily the best maps. They seem to bring together the most goals that the various people in this group had.
It's called Davidson Adler?
Davidson 1 and, S. Davidson and S. Adler.
That's Davidson.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the third group had the divided West. So they're looking at these. There's really 2 approaches to this. We had 3 maps, the 2 maps from E. Briggs and then the R. Becker map. They just had the West divided a little bit, where the kind of southwestern district crossed I-8 a little bit, relatively speaking. And then they all had almost identical eastern 2 districts. They're very similar in all 3 of those maps. Then there were the E. Cook and the NDC Green maps, where you can see down below. These maps brought that southwestern district all the way up to Fletcher Road. In one case, all the way to the city line, kind of crossing off Fletcher as Fletcher drops south, or following Fletcher Road all the way around. The interesting trade-off here, and this is one of the choices that we face, and we look forward to public input on this. The Fletcher Road division in the west makes sense. It's a logical, easy-to-follow boundary, like that one criterion. The trade-off is that the other 3 maps are more compact in the downtown area. So in the E. Cook map, you get a little bit of a stranger division downtown. Same thing with the NDC Green map. In order to make that Fletcher Road border consistent over in the west, you end up having to kind of come down through downtown to get the rest of the population. So they're all reasonably compact. They all balance those features, but they balance them in different ways. Fewer maps in this group. So our recommendation would be to go forward with the green map, since it kind of captures the feel of all of them. But again, you could choose any of these maps to take forward as your focus map. So again, this is just a summary. So we're looking at, in group 1, suggesting the orange and the P-Circo map is the ones kind of most representative of the group and of the goals that the map authors in that group had. In group 2, the S. Adler and S. Davidson maps, and then in group 3, the green map. And then we have the maps in detail, so you can see, and then I was going to add, this is again our recommendation, and this is certainly open to your feedback. Then we have the maps shown in more detail for those who want to, if you want to come in and look at the more details or ask about streets and things like that. These maps, each of the 5 is in, we have it in larger scale so people can see them better. Again, the orange and P-Circo have east and west united, but very different maps in the central, obviously. And S. Adler, again, has the west united and the east divided. And I should note, divided sometimes comes with a negative connotation. It's not meant as a negative connotation. It's simply how the communities are grouped. When I say the east is divided, that's getting you more of a north blend, a horizontal district as opposed to a vertical district. And S. Davidson, you see all these maps have fairly clean lines, have fairly compact lines that follow major roads to a pretty good degree. So my compliments to the public as they worked on these maps and came up with it. So we have all 5 of those we can show. And then the election cycle, again, this is considerably easier here than it is in most jurisdictions. You have 1 council member who's up in 2018, so the approach we've taken, which isn't required, but it seems logical, would be to have whatever district that council member's up, be up that year. In part because in the few cases where there is a pairing, the 2020 member has the option of running early, midterm for that seat, so no one is barred from running, as they would be if we flipped it. But happy to discuss this in more detail if there are questions about it. So that's a fairly quick spin through a lot of maps. I'm happy to answer any questions you have or to answer questions that the public raises as well.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a long process. We'll need you to answer questions from council and the staff. But let's go ahead and start with the council. I'll open it up to questions, and I have a feeling there's going to be quite a few. Go ahead. Steve?
How did you arrive at the 5 maps that you did?
So, a couple of things. One, I was looking at that group of maps and trying to see which maps would best represent the various goals. So which maps would put together the different goals that people had mentioned when they sent in their maps. Then looking at the list of criteria. Okay, we have maps that are fairly similar. Which one is more compact than the other? And in many cases, it was which one got more seats covering downtown. And I should note, there was one map in particular that looks kind of funny, but let me see if I can. So one of the choices was wrestling with that. Let me go. So, for example, the NDC yellow map, which you see in the bottom left, and there's another map that does this too. It looks a little funny as you're getting 3 arms kind of coming across the city, not very compact. It's because that map has all 4 districts covering downtown. So there's a couple, that was one of the things looking at how many districts are in downtown was often the deciding factor. So it's not that there's anything wrong with any of the other maps. It just seemed to best represent the collection of goals and the decision that we do need to find a way for the public to comment more on the big picture. And once we get a good sense of which group you want to go with, probably the next hearing we'll get there, then we can come back and say, okay, is this map the best, or should we go back to one of the other maps?
More questions? Okay, I just want to clarify. So you're suggesting your recommendations are for the P-Circle 1, correct?
Yes.
NDC yellow?
NDC orange, sorry.
So NDC yellow is not one of the recommendations?
Right.
Okay, so then NDC orange, S. Davidson, S. Adler, and NDC green.
Correct.
Okay. Am I to assume that some of these other maps that are in this pile don't meet all of the requirements for the California Voting Act?
Actually, the ones that you have before you, all the 21 maps we're talking about today, all meet all the legal requirements.
Okay.
There were some others that aren't even in this presentation. So, yeah, and actually, if you do want to look in detail at any of the other maps, I have them as backup slides. So all the ones you're looking at in this packet are legal and available to you to adopt.
All right. Will that answer my question, Bob?
Yeah, do we have to take the maps you pick out for us, or can we pick our own?
Oh, no, certainly feel free to pick your own.
Because I think that, we're the council, and you're just, all of these maps would work. So any ones that we want to pick, I would think those would be the 5 that we want, not necessarily the ones you want, but the ones we want.
That's definitely true. I always say, our firm, we're the demographic numbers experts. You and the people who live here are your neighborhood experts, and we
Right.
certainly defer to your
So we
judgment.
don't have to take your maps. I don't like necessarily the ones you pick, but I like others.
Right. Our suggestion would be to make sure that you have one from each group, just so you're going forward to the next hearing, at least one from each group, so you're going forward to the next hearing with all 3 groups on the table to get public comment on those, but you can
we have
certainly
to do
choose that.
that?
No, Bob, we can, it's our choice at this
Yep.
point,
That's what I
so,
thought,
yeah.
yeah. So we aren't dictated what we have to have.
No, you can start picking your winners. I think we should limit it to somewhere between 3 and 5, so that we have a reasonable number of maps to go to the final hearing with. But again, that's open to interpretation, whatever you all want to do. Well, sir, thank you. Please stay close, because I'm sure that there'll be many questions. All right, before I open the public hearing, council, do you have anything you want to ask? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing and ask if there's start calling the speaker cards.
The first speaker is George Ibarra.
Hi, Mr. Barra.
Hi, good evening, Honorable
Welcome.
Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you and present our maps to you. My name is George Ibarra, and I'm with the East County Coalition. I'm here to request that you approve the Unified Communities of El Cajon B. Johnson 1 map. As we all know, yes, the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed to ensure and prohibits voting discrimination as it is guaranteed by the 14th and 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution. But I just have to ask you this, what good are these guarantees if the voting public of this great city of El Cajon, I'm sorry, I lost my place.
It's okay.
And may I add, in particular, the communities of color that comprise a great number of this great city feel that their vote does not count because of the present practices in place. These communities feel that they are underserved and underrepresented by the present makeup of the City Council and Mayor's office. As the demographics, racial makeup, and needs of this great city change, and we all know that's happening and has happened, so should the representatives of this great city. Change is good. Change is good. And again, I am making this request. I beseech you all to approve the Unified Communities of El Cajon B. Johnson 1 map that will empower said communities. Failure to do so is mere gerrymandering.
Sir? Might stay? I just have a couple questions. Just a couple questions. How you doing?
Absolutely, yes, sir. I'm doing great.
So, do you remember your map? Do you have a copy of it?
We do have that.
So in District 1, the Fletcher Hills area,
Yes, sir.
so most of this makes sense to me, but it kind of loops around at the bottom. Why not have District 4 just be contiguous at that point? Why loop District 1 around to the bottom?
I will let her answer that.
I assisted,
Come on up, please.
hi. My
Hi.
name is Brisa Johnson. I'm one of the organizers in El Cajon who's been working with communities of color in El Cajon since 2016 with passing Measure S as well as the implementation of it. And we actually collaborated with a demographer provided by the ACLU and San Diego County and Imperial counties to create a map that had majority-minority districts. So our focus point within the California Voting Rights Act was to ensure that we had an equal level playing field for districts to have a majority-minority as well as the opposite. So it's really important for us to create coalition districts that would be empowering to communities of color. So District 4 and District 3 are specifically empowerment districts, so they are majority-minority districts. The reason why we swooped District 1 specifically down is because if you were to bring 4 further down, you will lose the majority-minority empowerment district that we were creating. And even same thing, if you were to take it up, the same thing would happen. So to stick with our goal, which was the majority-minority coalition empowerment districts, we cut down 1. It also allowed us to still have equal population of voters within each district.
All right. So I guess the same answer then would be for why the number 2 district has this strange shape where it's basically
Yes.
comes up and then goes way over to the west. And I don't have a I understand what the Voting Rights Act was all about, and I get that. That makes sense. But I do think we have to be careful about not making very odd-looking districts. It seems El Cajon is pretty much a square. It doesn't seem like it would be fair just to divide it into.
Have you seen
4.
San Diego's districts? The city of
Well, that
San
doesn't make it
Diego?
right.
I'm not saying it makes
A lot of
it
things
right.
San Diego does, we
I'm not
try
saying
to
it makes
avoid.
it right, but what I'm saying is you have to see if the purpose. So if your purpose is to have a map that looks pretty, then that's your purpose. Our purpose was to make sure that we have representation, because what's happening right now is the districts have, most of the district maps that were presented by other groups, by other people, and even some of the maps, not all of them, by the NDC, had where each district's majority vote was the white population. And you have in El Cajon an extreme diverse community, full of different backgrounds, full of different colors of skins, and we feel as a community that we are not represented. So it's really important for us, our priority, to have a map that had representation of these communities so that we could have a city council member that looked like one of us, that understands our issues, that can represent our issues, that would speak to the issues that directly impact us.
Yeah, I understand.
So diversity was key in our map. It wasn't so that it looked nice. It was so that we have
No,
representation.
just so you understand, I don't want to get into a long debate, but it's not about looking nice. I'm just trying to be fair to all people. I got to be honest, I personally don't, I see myself as being colorblind. I don't think that...
Do you know when the light is red and the light's green?
I think there's one race, the human race. But, well, I get what you're saying, and we'll go from there. I just wanted to ask why, and so now you made me understand.
Honorable Mayor,
Yeah.
if I may, we've registered. Well, we've actually assisted over 2,500 folks become American citizens. Of these 2,500 folks, how many of them do you think voted last election? Almost none of them did because they felt they had a failing chance. This map gives us a chance to have someone in place here that represents our communities. We're no longer singing, we shall overcome. What I'm saying is our time has come.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question for both the speakers. Can I ask that at this time?
Oh,
or
yeah,
later
sure.
time?
If the speakers could come back, I'm sorry, I didn't realize there were questions of you.
You defined majority minorities. I'd like more information. Can you provide me more information?
Yes.
What the definition of majority minority, I'd like more information.
Yes. So a majority minority is where underrepresented communities, also known as minority communities, communities of color, have the larger vote within the district, so 50% plus one. What happens a lot of times in districting, because the white population is so heavy, is communities of color tend to fall into the background, and you have majority white voters having more of the power within decision-making. And so having a majority-minority is saying that you're taking this minority community and giving them the majority vote, even though they're considered the underrepresented or the underserved. And so majority-minority is just classifying that. What a coalition district is El Cajon, communities of color, 28% Latino, 8% African American, 6% considered API, Asian Pacific Islander, and 3% considered other. This is just from the census and the data just based off the population of El Cajon. It's very small, as you could tell, to the 68% white. And so coalition districts is when you don't have one minority group that is large enough to be 50% of the vote. And so what happens is you combine communities of color together to build a coalition district. So you combine the Latino vote with the African American vote, with the API vote, with the Middle Eastern vote to get a coalition district, which is the majority minority. So if you actually look at the demographics of the B. Johnson 1 map, you'll see that District 1 and District 2 have a majority white vote population, and then District 3 and 4, when you combine all communities of color, they then have the majority vote.
So the demographics we got as part of our package on the back of the maps provided demographics for Latino, for Asians, for Filipinos, and those are only three. Do you have any more information you can give me?
It's actually Latinos, African Americans, API, so Asian Pacific Islander combined. Native Americans were also there, and Middle Eastern as well. The only issue with Middle Eastern, and this is just how the data is collected with census, is at the time that the census data was collected, there wasn't an actual box for the different ethnicities within the Middle Eastern community, and so a lot of Middle Easterns then recorded themselves as white.
I guess what I'm saying is on the back of this page, there are demographics. I need more information.
Yes,
not like instantly?
Yes.
Edits
So
between
the
now-
demographics that you have were the demographics provided by NDC. We, of course, with our demographer, have a different breakdown of the demographics, and if you would like that, I'd be more than happy to send it to you.
I would love to see it.
Yes,
We've got 2
no
weeks to
problem.
review it, and I'd love to get more information.
Thank you. I will send that to you. Anybody else want a copy?
Yes, I would actually would. Thank
Okay.
you.
See, this didn't come by accident. This became because your constituency, the public here in El Cajon, is crying out for representation that they are not getting right now. They are getting taxation, but they're not receiving representation. So that's why we're here tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Estela de los Rios.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members.
Welcome.
And my name is Estela de los Rios. I am also with the United Communities Coalition, and I am also supporting B. Johnson 1. And why? Because as a resident of El Cajon 40 years plus, I've seen the changes. I've seen the demographics, the diversity, the enrichment, not only different cultures, but different languages, and a variety of community of interest. And I think this is beautiful. This adds to what El Cajon is all about. So many of us concerned residents did what you asked us to do. You asked us to go to these workshops. You requested that we do our mapping. You requested that we give you feedback. We all studied the website with every process that you asked us to do. So therefore, we as a community, all our coalition here, is here to support B. Johnson 1. And again, why? Because this represents who we are today. Look in the audience. I don't think I've been to many of these city council, and I don't think I've seen such an enriched audience today. This is what the Unified B. Johnson 1 map looks like. So, I would like to recommend, encourage you, Mayor and City Council, to please approve the B. Johnson 1 so that the great citizens of El Cajon may have an equal opportunity to represent them, our issues, and everyone that lives here, to respect our communities of interest, because we don't want to split our communities. We want to be part of the community, and we don't want to be robbed of our voices. We want to have a voice. So please, this is for the betterment of all of El Cajon, of your council and of the entire city. We only want what's fair. And I know that you're all familiar with what the Voting Rights Act is, because we heard from National Demographic Corporation, and we'd like to thank them. But we also received the recommendation of a very well-recognized and well-known demographer as well, because mapping is very difficult. You have to be an expert. We as community consulted, and I think on your website it says, you know, you got together, and I too had so many notes, but listening to everyone here, I got a little excited myself. So I hope again, I cannot reiterate how important and crucial this decision is for all of you that want to move forward and embrace our communities, to embrace the different cultures and the different languages that live here in El Cajon. So thank you. I hope you do the right thing. I hope you do what's best. And I see my red button going off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Bailey.
Mr. Bailey, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. My name is Mark Bailey. I live at 1541 Berenda Place, and I am here this evening to speak against the Divided West plans. I had reviewed the maps. I've been a resident of Fletcher Hills for 17 years. It's a very cohesive and unified community and neighborhood, and I don't think it would serve it well to be divided in its districting. Thank you.
Are there any maps that you do like?
I would trust the process to work on the rest of it. I was just speaking against the division of Fletcher Hills.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Paul Serco.
Hey, Paul, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, council. I just wanted to come and say thank you for going through this process. I had fun making my map, and I was pleasantly surprised to see it selected as one of the 5 finalists. One of the things I wanted to talk about when it comes to the maps is how our different communities have a lot of diversity, but we've got very, very dense apartment complexes in, for example, in the B. Johnson 1 map in 3 and 4. We've got a lot of heavy density populations, and I just want to make sure that as we go through the process, we make sure that we don't lose their voice and we don't lose the communities of interest on the hillsides either. I looked at all the different maps that were available on the website, and there's a lot of different ideas. I'm not going to push my map. I'm just happy it made it. But just as we go through the process, watching for compact communities, because quite honestly, when it comes down to election time, somebody, hopefully lots of people, will be walking their communities, trying to raise votes, and I hope that by this division, we're able to create communities that are easily walkable, that one person can represent well. That's all I have.
Let me see if there's any questions for you. Questions? Okay.
All right.
Paul, thank you.
Joe Alegria.
Good evening, honorable city council members.
Hi, Joe.
And good evening, Mayor Wells. How are you all
Welcome.
tonight?
By the way, I should point out Joe's a school board member.
Yes, thank you. I am an elected school board member, gratefully elected with this community as a minority woman. So I do appreciate everyone who supported me in that election time. Tonight, I'd like to address the map and the quadrant areas that I am in favor of is to continue to unify the western half of the map with a quadrant of 4 different areas. As I have mentioned, I'm a board member here with our Union School District, and I do have the opportunity to visit every community and every school, and I understand that each school has their own and unique communities. I take into consideration all of the schools that I represent with their minority statuses, economic statuses, and also their financial statuses. We are a diverse community, and it is important that we always take that into consideration. In my area where I live is actually the southeast corridor, Granite Hills, also known as Story Park. In my community, I would hope that my representation would keep in mind the people that live there. Our demographics range of minorities, different races, also several different economic statuses.
Can I ask you which map that you liked?
I prefer, there are several maps that are incorporated with equal quadrants throughout the city, where it basically cuts the city into axes with an epicenter, I believe, somewhere in the downtown area. So B. Johnson would be close to a map that I would prefer. However, I would more or less prefer quadrants that are more equal and lateral within the city boundaries. I want to also take into consideration with those boundaries, with the quadrants, as they're cut, we also have the same schools in each quadrant that can also help harbor the interests and the autonomy of each school. With our school districts, we have, in the Upper Fletcher Hills area, we have our Flying Hills. Flying Hills School is very suggested for elite performing arts school. And a lot of the children there have the opportunity to study amongst the focused performing arts thread. As you go down towards the lower area of the city, in the Johnson and Cajon Valley area, those areas have a tendency to run very deep and dense with minority populations. I do agree that as well. I'm sorry, I see the red light flashing.
That's okay. Were there any maps that you disliked?
There was one map in particular that I didn't agree with, and that would be, I believe, it was our Becker map, in that it did appear that it split the Fletcher Hill area, which I do believe that the Fletcher Hill area should be maintained as one unified area.
That's consistent with the Johnson map, too, I believe. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Let me see if there's any questions for you, Joe. Any questions? No, thank you.
Mohammed Tuama.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, always helpful city staff. I would like to first welcome Mr. Graham Mitchell for being our new city manager assistant, and I hope that we don't bother you with a lot of questions so you don't escape just as Majid did. My name is Mohammed Turama. I'm an El Cajon resident, volunteer, and I'm working with a newcomers Middle Eastern community on a community improvement project, just like the utility boxes and other projects that we would like to do here in El Cajon community. We, as a Middle Eastern community leaders, some of us, not all of us, we worked on a map which is unfortunately called M2AMA. I called it something else, but it was my last name, so that is the name of the map. We submitted this map after reviewing the map that was submitted on the April 18 workshop. So me and some community members attended the workshop and reviewed the map suggested by community members and the NDC, and we decided that we can have some minor changes that can represent the valley floor. And I hope that you see KPBS interview that our community members were at that workshop. In this map, we tried to have the valley floor united as a community because they share a lot of values and a lot of things, especially with the multi-housing versus single homes. So this is what we have as why we have those kind of district cut. And I attended a lot of workshops with the other community maps, and I kind of listened to them and see what they want to say. So this is how we came up with this map. And you can see this map has equal population, no racial gerrymandering, and the communities of interest are the valley floor community and where most of the multi-housing, as I mentioned. It's a compact map, united east and west, and blended approach as was mentioned by the NDC people, and blended approach to central district. All the borders are on major roads and freeway, as you can see, so it's easy to be recognized, except for the south 2nd Street. Should be Hamasha, but it's South 2nd Street, because when we look at that part of the city, it's mostly single homes, not a multi-family homes. So this is basically what I have for this map. And the reason that we would like to have them valley floor people, because I believe there's a lot of opportunity for the valley floor community do something for the community and actually start working with the community. There are a lot of potential, there are a lot of skilled people there who can feel that this is something that they can do for their own community. And I support all what every other person mentioned about their maps and why the reason they cut their maps in some ways. And I believe everyone is right. We just submitted this map because it's really easy. It's really representing the Valley Floor community.
Let me see if there's some questions for you, because we have got to a red light. Questions? Well, I think, I see you put a lot of time in the map, and it looks like it makes sense.
18 hours.
18 hours.
It's the first time for me to work on something.
It's your first run as a demographer.
Yeah.
It looks like you did a nice job. I appreciate it. Well, we may have some more questions for you as we go along, but thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Kovu Allen.
Mr. Allen, how are you?
Good afternoon, Council. Good afternoon, staff. My name is Kovu. Active duty United States Marine Corps. El Cajon has been my home as long as I've lived here. I intend to make it raw. I intend to make it such after that. To make it my point very clear, if you look at the council as it stands right now, and you go ahead and you look at the people attending these meetings, we are very sure that when it comes to these meetings, only a small fraction % of the community shows up. Of that small fraction of the community, you see what it looks like, and that's not reflected necessarily in the council. Now, I heard you speak about race and being colorblind and being one human race. I get it. However, race has been used as a social construct, and we have to acknowledge that. That being said, I want to talk about word association real quick, because he had some questions. I want to make sure everybody's on the same field. When people speak of empowering, it doesn't mean to take power from it. It just means to make things at more level. And I think as we go forth, that has to be a part of the discussion in order for us to have healthy debates. If we look at the B. Johnson map, I'm not going to skip to it. You've seen it enough times. It has two minority majorities, right? So they'll have two minority council members on the seats. So if there are disagreements, it's half and half, so it can be worked out without healthy debate amongst adults. Now, that is not to say that the minority majorities cannot elect white council members. That's not impossible. They just have to represent them. So I am for that map also, and looking at it, I saw we had a man speak against the United West. Everyone that everybody has spoken against so far, B. Johnson, so more or less falls in compliance with what they want. So I would advise, as a member of the community, and it's just advice, you don't have to take it, to back the B. Johnson one. If you have any questions for me.
Any questions? No. Just off the subject, what do you do in the Marine Corps?
Supply, and I'm also a McMap instructor, martial arts trainer.
Very nice. Good for you. My son's a recon Marine, so.
Bet, that's what's up. All right. One parting thing I would like to say, though, just to point out when it comes to voting for things like I was here last time when they were talking about the marijuana thing, right? Yeah. And there are wide different views within the community for people who showed up. If we have a split council where you have two minority majorities and you have the other, I'm not going to call them others, if you have two minority majorities in here, understand that it's not just one race or one person's interest or one thing in here. So if you have a more diverse council member, you'll have better discernment when it comes to voting on things like that. That's just the last one that popped in my head. So
I appreciate your point of view. Thank you for coming.
Cornelius Bowser.
Hello, Mr. Bowser. Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. And I agree with George and Brisa, what they said. They basically said everything that I want to say. But I did just want to say, because when you were speaking about seeing just a human race, I think we all want that. And that's our goal, just to see no color. But actually, when we live in the society that we live in, we know that it's not like that. And so we want to make sure that we have a city council that represents all people and everyone and their needs, because human beings have human needs, and we want to make sure that our needs are met. And not only that, when we talk about our needs being met and the issues that we may have, there's a thing called accountability. And so to be able to hold our council member accountable, he has to be able to represent the area that we're in and be able to have a powerful voice to be able to speak to that individual, to let them know that if they don't do what we want, then we will vote them out. And as it stands today is, you know, especially when you talk about people of color, we are outnumbered. And so we need to have districts that really give us a chance to be able to address our issues. I actually, in the B. Johnson, I support B. Johnson 1, United Communities, and I actually live in District 4. So I'm for that. And that way, whoever we vote for in District 4, we'll be able to hold that individual accountable. Just like when we was talking about San Diego, it's divided up all kind of ways, but you have diversity on the city council, and those community members are able to hold their council member accountable because they know that those folks who are coming represents the majority of that community and their needs. And that's all we're asking, that our needs be met, and we can hold that individual accountable if they don't do what we put them in office to do. That's all I want to say.
Let me see if there's any questions. Any questions? No, thank you. You spoke very well, and I'm glad we agree on that. So,
Eva Pacheco.
hi, Ms. Pacheco. Hi. I want to pull that microphone down. Yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me? Okay.
I can. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, council members, honorable mayor. My name is Eva Pacheco, and I want to say too many things, but I already are supporters for the B. Johnson #1 say it. But I would like to say thank you to you for allowing this process to go, because that helps us not to go in another route, because we were ready. We really see that change has to happen. We really want people of those cities representing us. At this time, in my over 20 years living in El Cajon, I don't feel like that. And I really like and support the B. Johnson, because we have worked on that map. Although a very professional demographer worked and drafted the map that we submit, and we encourage you really to take in consideration this map, because this is representing the demographics of El Cajon. And I'm here to support that, and I really encourage you to support the map that represents us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Huidad Schlotter.
Hi, welcome.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council, City Manager, and staff. My name is Huidad Schlotter. I'm a retired electronics engineering manager with the Department of the Navy, and I'm the Vice President of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. I am here in front of you, but I would like to introduce you to members of the Middle Eastern community that came. If you may raise your hand. There are more of you. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and provide additional feedback on the draft district maps. We are happy that the city held multiple community outreach workshops and that interpretation services were provided. At the beginning, we sought to prioritize communities of interest. I believe the Middle Eastern community, though they are a hard community to identify in the census, were sufficiently supported to participate fully in the public input process. I want to address the most pressing needs of our communities. We must authentically engage them to have a voice in the electoral and public policies that affect their lives. This is an important part of creating a welcoming and open society, and in ensuring the inclusion of Middle Eastern communities in our local democracy. For many years, our communities have paid taxes and contributed to the economic and cultural vibrancy of El Cajon city. However, we lacked representations. I respectfully urge the Council to consider the community's feedback related to District 3 and 4 of the consultant-created orange map.
You can turn the light off, it's fine. Leave that off. So NDC Orange is the one you are promoting?
Yeah. We have submitted letters for your consideration that outline additional input on those maps. Sorry. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak on this matter today. I look forward to working together so as to reflect the diverse communities that enrich the city of El Cajon. Thank you.
Any questions? I have a question.
Yes.
Do you feel that this map would protect the interests of the entire Middle Eastern community, or is it one segment of the Middle Eastern community?
It will protect the majority of the Middle Eastern section, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
With the added changes, we have submitted yesterday letters signed by residents of El Cajon.
Yeah, I saw that.
You
Thank
saw
you.
that,
Yeah.
okay. So with those changes implemented, removal of some census markers and adding others that have high density of Middle Eastern community, that would indeed represent more the Middle Eastern community.
Is there a map that you submitted that you think is better than this?
No, we were working with the consultant-prepared orange map, which is similar to Mr. Muhammad Tama.
Our consultant is going to help us here. Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah.
I just put down my phone. So, just very briefly, the letter that she's talking about on the map, the proposed changes, you see where District 1 comes across I-8?
Yeah.
This area would go into District 4, and the balance would be instead one would come across down south below, I forget what road that is, but the schools down here in this area would go into 1. So there'd be a trade of population.
That's very similar to the the Johnson map, right? Yeah.
The idea is the Johnson map.
Ladies and gentlemen, please.
The proposed changes to Orange would still follow I-8 as the border. It wouldn't have the jagged edges through here.
Okay.
And then on the flip side, there was a similar small switch over between 3 and 2, where 3 would come over a little bit, and then 2 would come over the other way a little bit.
Now,
small change on the other side.
That wasn't one of the maps that you recommended.
Well, the letters just came in, I believe, yesterday. So
okay, so we don't have a way to look at that map quite yet.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Yeah, we've been drawing it in, and we'll get it out to you so you can have it before the next hearing. You'll have all explained details.
So when can we see the changes that we proposed?
Probably tomorrow.
Oh, by tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you very much.
Russell Bowman. Oh, okay. Thank you. Brisa Johnson.
Hi.
Hi.
Back in.
Back at it again. Good evening. How are you? Good?
Nice.
All
Thanks for
right.
coming.
Thank you so much for having us. So I just wanted to say this, since you already know I'm in favor of B. Johnson as long as the rest of the community here. But I just want to say this. You all have been really great with this process since 2016, from getting the word out on Measure S, being in favor of Measure S, and then since January with the workshops and hiring the demographer, and NDC has been absolutely amazing. They've been such a resource to the community. The workshops were phenomenal. The website has been consistently updated. People from city council offices have always responded to our emails in a very timely manner with any information we needed to move forward. So I want to thank you so much for your transparency thus far. And I just ask that as we move into the final phase, as we move into reviewing the maps, as we move into voting the maps, that you keep that transparency open, you keep those lines of communication open, and you really listen to the people. I think you all provided the demographer and the workshops because you wanted community engagement. You wanted people involved in the civic process, and they're active. They're here. I haven't seen this many people turn out to a city council meeting in a while, and it's really refreshing to see community excited about something and involved in something, especially when it comes to civic engagement. And so I ask that you activated these folks, you put that fire in them, they're here, and I ask that you really listen to them, you really take in their consideration, because as city council members, you've been voted by the people, and it's your job to represent the people and hear the people and always stand with the people. So I ask that as you move into the last process, you don't lose those voices and you consider everything that you heard here tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
James Elia.
James, welcome.
How's it going, Mayor? Mayor, council members, I'm not with the Citizens Coalition, but I wish I was. I am throwing away the map that I was actually going to endorse earlier. There is no reason whatsoever why the B. Johnson 1 map should not be adopted immediately in the city of El Cajon. This map, when I look at it, I see a celebration of diversity. I see multicultural festivals. I see community engagement with people that are diverse. I see people that normally would never get involved in politics unless their voice could be heard according to this map. The fantastic work that this group has done has just showed you how passionate everyone is and how engaged we want to be in our communities. At the very least, I would ask the council not to adopt something to cut up the West. That area is heavily populated by Caucasians, and besides that, there's a huge wealth and income equality gap as well. The B. Johnson 1 map looks like the kind of map that we can raise families in. It looks like the kind of map, that looks like the kind of map to me that businesses would like to come open in El Cajon. That looks like the kind of map to me that investors would like to come to El Cajon. And that map looks like everyone in this room. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alexander Kraft.
Mr. Kraft, welcome.
Thank you. That's a tough act to follow. My name's Alexander Kraft. I wasn't born in El Cajon. I was born in the Naval Hospital. But I've lived in El Cajon pretty much my whole life, about 35 years. I'm a homeowner here. And I got to admit, I hear about this idea of a majority-minority district, and the first kind of instinct is, whoa, we're talking about districts that are specifically shaped to empower certain groups over others. And I understand how that kind of sounds, because I get that little twinge too. I believe that everybody involved in this process has the best interest of their constituency at heart. I believe that everyone involved in this process also believes that their political ideas are right, and that their adoption is in the best interests of the constituency.
That's why it's so easy to fall into the belief that if what the constituency wants is counter to your own political ideas, that it's okay to do something they don't really want because they're wrong. You know, they don't want what's in their own best interest. Everyone wants to silence their political opponents on a certain level, not out of malice or greed or a hunger for power, at least not for most people, but because they think that their opponents are wrong and what they want is right. But remember, everyone thinks that they're right, okay? So I apologize for the civics lesson at a city council meeting, but what we haven't heard about much tonight is the fact, this is all over the news, that districting itself has become a political battleground before the votes are even taken. So I understand that reaction when the community says that they're specifically trying to emphasize representation for specific groups to think, yikes, but they vote wrong. But if you think you're right, and they think they're right, there's no way to figure out who's right but to give them their voice and let the process of liberal democracy do its job. Contiguity, compactness, these things don't necessarily tell us anything about demographics or voting blocks. There's no reason to assume that a just and fair districting will look obvious on a map to demographics laypeople. So finally, Mr. Mayor, you say that you're colorblind, and I'm very glad to hear that, and I believe that it's true. But you might want to consider that colorblindness may also blind you to the fact that most people aren't colorblind. And race and ethnicity are issues that do affect people's lives, and they affect people's lives deeply, regardless of how colorblind some individuals may be. Now, I see the red light, and I've got 2 more sentences.
Go ahead, you can finish.
You might be aware, I've lived in El Cajon and San Diego for about 35 years. East County in general, and El Cajon in particular, it has kind of a certain long-standing reputation for racial injustice. Prove them wrong, all right? Prove them wrong. It's time to bite the bullet, trust in the democratic process, and give the people their voice, even if you think you might disagree with them.
All right, thanks for coming.
Barry Butler.
You know what? I kind of figured that one.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Morning.
Or good
evening. You got
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, staff. My name is Barry Butler.
Mr. Butler.
I'm a Marine Corps veteran. 2531 Communication Electronics. I called airstrikes during the Gulf War. I live in Granite Hills, too. But my experience with Granite Hills has been a different one. I've been living in El Cajon since 2003. I'm a single father. I raise a son. At least once a month, I get called the N-word. And I put my life on the line for this country. I don't feel welcome here. I'm a homeowner. I live in a place right now. I moved in November, and the first welcome I got was from my HOA president telling me, you may not be liking it here because you're black. And I had witnesses in front of me when this happened. Do you know why Jesus wept? Jesus wept because of Martha and Mary crying when Lazarus died. He felt their compassion so deeply.
It's true.
That he began to weep. All we're asking for is a seat at the table. That's it. We don't want to take anything from you. We just want to be a part of. I want you to make me feel like I'm a part of. I purchased a home where I had to buy surveillance cameras and alarm system because I worry about my son's safety when I'm not there. I don't feel represented in this city. We have an opportunity here. You as city councilmen have the power and the ability to show compassion and to put your personal feelings aside. You guys say you're colorblind. Here's a chance for you to prove it. I humbly request and beg of you to approve B. Johnson 1 map, because we're not trying to be politicians. We're not trying to take over. We just want a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eddie Price.
Hello, Council.
Mr. Price, welcome.
And city staff. And I'm probably going to make the B. Johnson people kind of mad because I was with them when they came up with that, but I had an epiphany when I was sitting over here. You know, we're talking a lot about people, and that's a beautiful thing, but there's also economic development, job growth, and other things that we'd like to have a say on. And in those districts, in District 4 and 3, there's mom and pop shops, but there's really no, that I know of, anything that creates economic development. If Area 4 was to go straight up 8 and straight up Marshall, it would take in a couple of car dealerships and a mall that our community, well, I live in District 1, but that community would actually have an opportunity to look for financial support, as often city council districts do in other cities. They don't just rely on the people, they rely on some of the businesses that are in those council districts. Yeah. So I would humbly, you know, at the risk of being beat up by B. Johnson 1, whoever that is, suggest that maybe you raise, you know, include some economic development in Area 4 or perhaps Area 3, and then leave the map as it is. But right now, there's really there's nothing but people, which is a beautiful thing in 4 and 3.
Was there a map you liked?
I liked this one. I helped create this one. But I had an epiphany when I was sitting over here that it needs some economic development and some other opportunities within that district. So there's some car dealerships and there's a mall over there that community would have to, you know, communicate with as far as growth in that community.
You know, that actually is an interesting point because.
Well, tell her that because she don't.
Well, you know, look, we're all. This is a place where we're just going to discuss things. And I think it's okay to do that.
Right.
So, you know, I think your point. You know, see if I got this right. But your point being that a council person running for office in a district would so if a district included all of the mall and all of the car dealerships would have a pretty significant advantage over a council person running a district with no industry, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So split it up a little bit or something so that there would be some equity in that also.
Well, I think you took a bigger risk wearing the Raiders shirt than you did going against the B. Johnson, but.
I ain't scared. We're going to a Super Bowl in a year or two, so I ain't scared. And we got a football team, but I'll shut up now.
Thanks for coming, sir.
Tony Sotile.
Mr. Sotile, welcome.
Thank you, Honorable City Council and Mayor. When I came here, I looked at all the different maps, and I said to myself, the map that I really like is the orange and also the circle. So when I came here and I saw the planner or the district mentioned the same two maps, I was really, wow. I guess my thinking wasn't too far off. I wholeheartedly believe that Fletcher Hills should be kept together, as well as the east part, the Granite Hills area. And I think the orange and the circle map really put together the demographics which the city needs. As the previous speaker stated, that some of the car dealerships run along El Cajon Boulevard. So the orange one, also number 4, includes some of those car dealerships that are on El Cajon Boulevard, and the Johnson area as well. So between those two, I the circle, I'm still going to stay with the circle or the orange one, I think are the best ones. Because not only are we dealing with different needs and issues, but also we're also dealing with economic development for all the people of El Cajon, an opportunity to develop. So thank you very much.
Let me see if there's any questions. For any questions? Yeah, I have a question. So you mentioned Fletcher Hills. Why do you say that? Because several people mentioned that tonight. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, Fletcher Hills, even though it looks like a very large area, it's not highly populated. There are many spaces which hardly anybody lives in there. So if you reduce Fletcher Hills in any way, shape, or form, then Fletcher Hills would not be properly represented by the number of people that live there. It would be a lower number of people there. That's why I recommend that, because where you have Bradley and all that industrial area, nobody lives in that area, and it's part of Fletcher Hills. Then the houses on top of the hill, they're spread apart, and the homes have maybe 1, 2, or 3 people, so there's not a high concentration as the apartment buildings. That's why I recommend to keep it wholly together and not separate the community.
All right,
so
thanks,
that they
Tom.
be represented. Sure, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have no more cards at this time.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend, if council has any objections, a small break. Take a break. I think we'll take about 15 minutes because I'm going to let the councilman, Mr. Attorney, make sure this is okay, but I'd like to let the councilman take a chance to review their maps and review their notes before coming back for the rest of the meeting. Is that okay? We won't talk to each other. So 15-minute break. We'll come back and we'll finish this thing. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask our consultant to come back. He has a few things he wants to say. Let me just check. Staff, are there things that you need to say tonight? Okay, so we're just going to go with the consultant at this point. I think the first thing we need to do is close the public hearing. So I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing. Seconded. Please vote. Just a formality, folks.
The motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Just a couple of technical points on this. First of all, I did want to clarify, because it is hard to see a lot of the details on the map. There was a concern about the commercial area of 3 and 4. And just for those that can't tell, I do want to highlight the border of 3 and 4 here is Magnolia and Maine. So it's hard to see, but you all know that area downtown, just the gentleman's concerned. There is considerable downtown in both 3 and 4. So I do want to clarify that, because it can be hard to see. On a larger issue, I did want to note one concern with the comments about the Johnson map, and this is why it's good that there are 2 hearings, because these are not permanent comments and things that can't be addressed at the next hearing. But as I mentioned at the beginning, race cannot be the predominant factor in where lines are drawn. And so the comments tonight that the lines were determined by race, that falls in that category. And you may remember the ACLU brought a fact sheet here at the beginning of kind of how to draw lines. And just from the ACLU's own fact sheet, I wanted to just highlight, as they wrote, in the words of the Supreme Court, the constitutional wrong occurs when race becomes a dominant and controlling consideration. And some language in it says, line drawing bodies should look at other factors in addition to race, such as shared history, culture, language, common social networks, and shared interests in schools, housing, health, land use, and public safety. So before the council can have final adoption of a map, we need to have those kinds of justifications and supports in the record. It can't be because we wanted the numbers. There were also some comments that I wanted to make sure people were aware of the difference. This map, areas 3 and 4 are majority-minority, meaning the non-white population is 50% or more, by total population. There were some comments that that those 2 seats are minority-majority by eligible voters and by voters, and that's not correct. So I did want to encourage the group backing this to go back to their demographer, and I'm happy to talk to their demographer. This is not a final condemnation. I'm hopefully laying the seeds for what will happen over the next 2 weeks. to go back and forth and address those issues. There are lots of maps that have two districts where the minority-majority number is 40 or 45% in two districts like this. Actually, I went back and checked. The only map that has an actual majority-minority by voting strength district is the Broomfield map. The T. Broomfield, let me see if I can get to it quickly. There we go, I went past it. Area 4 in this map is a majority-minority seat. And this is the only one in any of the maps that shows your demographics. You don't have highly concentrated barrios or anything like that in El Cajon. The last comment about the Johnson map, and again, I want to emphasize this is encouraging. You know, we're happy to work with the group and with their demographer over the next 6 days. There's still time to get in a new map that the council could then consider at the next hearing, as we are with the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Group. The other concern is the area around downtown. If you look online, you can see the jigs and jags. And when you talk about the ACLU factors of shared history, culture, language, schools, housing, health, land use, these kinds of jigs and jags are what the courts look for as giveaways, that how is this block different than that block? How is this block different than that block in those shared concerns? And that's when they start to raise the flag of an illegal racial gerrymander. So not saying you can't forward this map. You certainly can for continued consideration. But those are the issues that need to be addressed so that we avoid the possibility of being considered a racial gerrymander if the council finally adopts it. So apologies for being a bit of a downer after quite a series of happy speakers, and I appreciate all that input. But I did want to get those in the record so that folks can come back at the next hearing and make a record that the council can base its adoption on if the council does want to go with this map. And again, I'm happy to talk to their demographer and work with them on adjusting this map as we are talking to other folks about adjusting their maps. It should be done in the next 6 days, though.
Yeah.
Any other questions you can address?
Questions? No, but we may call you back. This is pretty complicated stuff.
Yes. Definitely, especially with so many maps. It's
Well, I do have a question for you. I mean, based upon your last comment about Johnson 1, and it kind of perked my ears up when you said a judge might have problems with that. That is not something I'd be very excited about. How can we rectify that problem?
Well, the key thing is that the predominant factor in how the lines are drawn cannot be race. So it has to be, it can be shared language, it can be shared school attendance zones, it can be shared income levels. A number of your speakers talked about apartment residents versus single-family homes. All of those socioeconomic factors are completely legitimate concerns. The key is that someone who brings a legal challenger map can't be able to point and say, okay, you're saying this is language difference. The people in this block speak just as much a foreign language at home as people in this block. So that's why the jigs and jags get you in trouble. It's hard neighborhoods don't tend to be jigs and jags.
Yeah, we have a neighborhood down here at the bottom. It says Grant Street. And it seems to be arbitrarily just carved out. Would that be an issue?
Yeah, what happens in these cases is the demographers challenging the map put up a racial map, block by block, the ethnic makeup, and the map will correspond exactly to those colorings, and then you're in big trouble. So then the blocks and neighborhoods need to be chosen by neighborhood, not individual block based on this one's 40% white and this one's 45% white. It needs to be, what is the shared characteristic of each neighborhood?
All right. And just one more time, if you could tell me the maps that your company is recommending.
Sure. And right here. So, and I should emphasize, I'm not saying B. Johnson can't go forward.
I completely understand that. Yeah.
Okay. So it's orange and green among the NDC maps, and then P. Circo, S. Adler, and S. Davidson. And we have, and while they were talking, I've run the numbers, and we'll get it on the city website that breaks out the eligible voter demographics of each map and shows which maps have, 2 that are 40% and that kind of thing. So
And
people can look at that for the next
if we pass forward this orange map tonight, there's talk about changing it. So the map that we see in 2 weeks, would it be the original orange map plus the changed orange map, or would it be the revised orange map?
Well, if the council direction tonight was to pick these 5, at the next hearing, you would get these 5 plus any new maps that come in the next 6 days, which would include the revised orange.
Okay.
If you'd rather, you can not do orange tonight, and we can add in the revised orange tomorrow. So we'll bring forward these 5 if that's your direction, but we'll also bring forward anything new that comes in.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, thank you. Bob? Bob's carrying a question.
I have a couple of maps that I'd like to bring up that show diversity as well as, high and low in each one of the areas. And that would be the E. Cook one and also the R. Becker one. And you have different ethnicities in each one of the districts by splitting it up that way.
Hold on, Bob. We're just going to find the maps. If you want to comment on those, feel free.
No, I think, like I said, there's presuming commentary that supports them that isn't predominantly based on race. These maps are all fine. E. Cook this is the one I was looking for that I had in my mind the other day, or earlier today, where District 2 has this kind of, at first glance, it has this odd-looking neck, but the reason for that neck is obviously to get 2 into downtown.
That's
so the
right.
western edge of that neck
They
is
all
getting a
have
piece of
different
downtown.
diversity in each one of them.
Mm-hmm. And this one has it's one of the few that has all 4 districts getting a piece of downtown.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, any other
And
questions?
I can show you our Becker one. Oops. And this one, there were a number of comments during the hearings about E. Briggs, or E. Briggs 2, and this map is essentially identical to E. Briggs 2 for those who are interested in that map. There are 2 census blocks that are shifted. One because one map was drawn using the population kits, and another map was drawn, I think, by a demographer, so there's no substantive difference.
Those are the 2 I like.
Any other questions?
Anybody else?
All right, thank you, sir. All right, the public hearing is closed. Staff, did you want to weigh in on anything before we move on? All right, it comes back to the city council at this point. I know we're going to have a lot of discussion. I got to tell you right from the very get-go, and Bob, I know you're suggesting these 2 maps, but these 2 maps break up Fletcher Hills. Fletcher Hills is a historic community. Fletcher Hills is like Kensington or one of the other historic communities, a community that is known throughout the region. I don't see any reason to break it up. But it's a community of interest if I ever saw one. So I really have problems with breaking those up. Having said that.
That's what the ACLU wants, he says.
I'm sorry? I'm sorry, Bob, what was your question?
That's what the ACLU wants, is diversity in each one of the maps between the high and low income and high income, and
well,
rather than just one map that only isolates one group of people.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think the Voting Rights Act in general was not to break up communities, but it was actually to protect communities of interest. And so I think we have to be careful about, not only we have to be careful about protecting communities of interest, but I think we have to protect historic communities as well.
Well, the R. Becker is, leaves Fletcher Hills pretty much intact.
R. Becker.
R. Becker 1.
Well, not really. Historically, all that area at the north part of the pink zone, which is 2, would traditionally be Fletcher Hills. So you're going to completely divide that group, having a completely divided. their interests will not be, Fletcher Hill's interests will not be protected. I mean, I think Fletcher Hills has a right to have one council member protecting their interests, just like other communities of interest will have a
They're
right.
the majority of either one of those.
Well, let's move on. Ma'am, I'm really sorry, but if I start going down that road of taking calls from the audience, we're going to lose control of the meeting. I think we're going to go ahead and continue to keep it in the council. At this point, we certainly have heard everybody, so I think your interests are going to be protected. But let's go ahead and continue the talk. My recommendation to get started would be to go with the P Circle map, to go ahead with the B Johnson map, to go ahead with the NDC Orange map, the S Davidson map, the S Adler map, and because of what I said before about Fletcher Hills, I would reject the green map, the NDC green map. That would be my suggestion, but I'd like to hear from the rest of you.
I prefer the E. Cook map and the R. Becker map because I think that both those swing around to the hills that are to the west and to the south. And what I like about E. Cook is everybody has all the 4 districts take part of downtown. And historically, when, let's say in Los Angeles, where there's the mayor that is responsible for downtown and one council member, the downtown kind of gets ignored. And downtown is really the heart and soul of a city. So this way, everyone in the downtown area and part of the valley floor has a say in the election of each one of the council members.
Yeah, I agree with that. Others? Mr. Goebel?
Okay, I took a different approach completely. I went way back and I said, okay, Prop S passed to address potential or to avoid violations of the California Voter Rights Act. And that, if I'm interpreting that right, means to avoid disenfranchising groups protected by the California Voter Rights Act. And one of those is race. So I said, okay, out of all the maps, which maps, the data that I had to work with was with Latinos, Asians, and Filipinos. And Ms. Johnson, is she still here? Mr. Ibarra? That's why I said the only data I have is Latinos, Asians, and Filipinos. So if you want to give me anything else, there's no hard stop on a future date. But with what I had to work with, and then I said, okay, well then the highest turnout, where was the highest turnout among Latinos? Because that would indicate a higher concentration of Latinos and Asians and Filipinos in that district. Which maps have the highest turnout? That would infer the highest concentration or the higher concentration. That was the B. Johnson 1 map, the Brumfield map, the Cook, Glover, Spicone, and Circle maps. But I can't, by law, say, well, race is that's it, that's my consideration. So the other things I considered besides race were income level, which was one of the things I said, there must be different groups in El Cajon by income level, those that are below 50,000 and those that are above 50,000. And I said, those that are below 50,000 may have a different interest than those above 50,000. That could be a thing to consider. How about those that live in single-family homes versus those that live in multifamily housing? They would have different interests. How about those that own their homes versus those that rent their homes? And so that's how I looked at, I didn't even look at maps. I made a spreadsheet of the data of who had the highest turnout among Latinos. For instance, the Brumfield map, Sector 4 had 17% turnout among Latinos. That's the highest concentration. The Brumfield map, are you able to bring up the Brumfield map on the screen? And that was in Section 4. It had a 17% turnout in the 2014 election and a 22% turnout in the 2012. So by inference, I said, that must mean there's a lot of Latinos in that district. And that's something for me to consider to avoid disenfranchising Latinos. The whole purpose of redistricting is my logic so far. But I can't consider just the Latino factor. I have to consider what about the income of that level, and what about home ownership, and what about single-family homes. And after considering those four factors, the voter turnout, the income level, the single-family homes, and home ownership, I came up with my 6 maps, which was B. Johnson 1, E. Cook 1, Glover, Spacone, Circo, and Brumfield, based on the data.
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. B. Johnson 1, E. Cook 1, Glover, Spacone, Circo, and Brumfield. And to me, those recognize the concentration of Latinos in terms of voter turnout, and it also recognized income. It happened to also correspond with income levels in single-family homes and ownership versus renter. Those are the 4 factors I considered in putting those maps together. A different way of arriving at a map.
Ben?
Let me make this a little bit easier if I could. I spent 6 months studying this, and equal population is the only legal standard that you can uphold. Everything else with communities of interest and following contiguous lines takes a second seat to all that stuff. So when you take these maps into consideration, the equal population split is going to take precedent in any courtroom. Both state, federal laws will agree with that. So with that said, in order to prevent to trigger a cause of legal action, maps Cook 1, Briggs 2, Green, and Becker are safe. So, and I say that because so NDC cannot and would not give legal advice. It's 2 separate things. They give you a criteria to follow, and you take that into consideration. They give you the criteria, but they can't give you legal advice because they cannot. It's on a case-by-case basis. And keep this in mind, too. Most of us have some familiarity with district elections as it pertains to school districts or water districts or trustee areas. Those have similarities with council races, but not completely. So in order to not trigger a legal action under the 14th and 15th Amendments, the maps I named would do that.
I got to ask you, you're giving us legal advice?
No. You can check it.
But we pay a lot of money for a consultant, so I assume the consultant is at least passingly familiar with the laws regarding this. So I think it's ludicrous to suggest that anything that the consultant suggested, all of the maps the consultant suggested would be illegal.
So you can. So if Doug wants to come up, the only thing that would be upheld in court is an equal population split. If you didn't have that and you had everything else, for instance, I don't want to sound ludicrous, so I want to...
Well, let's go ahead and call our consultant up, because that is, it's quite a statement, so
Okay.
I want to
So
follow that
Doug,
up.
the question is this. If you have every other criteria but equal populations, but you have no legal map,
If your population deviation, the difference...
is more than 10%,
Right.
then you have no legal map.
Then you're in hot water.
Correct. So that's what I mean to say.
But none of these maps have more
Correct.
than 10%.
Correct. So
I just want to clarify. So what you're saying then is that all of these maps will pass the legal test. So that issue is really moot. It's moot at this point, right?
They don't do that.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask our councilman is suggesting which maps don't meet the legal criteria?
They don't meet the legal criteria, not in an outwardly towards the population form, but inwardly.
I really don't know what that means.
Well, without getting too legal into it, I mean, you can ask. Why don't you guys decide on what map you want to adopt, and then I voiced my concern and my approval for which maps, and I just wanted to let you know that which maps would not trigger a legal claim.
Can we make decisions based upon political futures of candidates?
Well,
is it legal to do that, or ethical or moral?
Well, I'm not a consultant on ethical and moral,
Okay.
so I'll avoid that. It is legal to consider council member residences as long as adjustments made to reflect current council members don't impact the Voting Rights Act and the legal criteria. I will avoid.
Yeah, I'm putting you in a bad situation.
Yeah.
I get it. I'm sorry.
Well, I should note, council member residences falls into that traditional redistricting criteria group where you can consider that. Now, to that said, the council, when it adopted criteria, did not include that in the list. We had as one of the options, the council did not include that. So you kind of have to change your criteria to consider that. So legally you can, but by the council's adopted criteria, it's not one of the criteria you've chosen.
Hey, we may call you up again.
Sure.
So I just got to be real clear here. You brought in what was it, over 100 maps you brought in, right?
147.
You brought 147 in, but all of those maps split up Fletcher Hills. Why is that?
All the maps split up Fletcher Hill. All the maps were drawn because they met every single criteria, and that was.
Did all the maps that you suggested split up Fletcher Hills?
Yes, they did.
Did it split up your council seat from Councilman Kendrick's seat?
That certainly was not one of the things that were taken into consideration.
Did it accidentally, 145 maps accidentally split up your council seat from Councilman Kendrick's seat?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that they did. And let me tell you something. I think that the population is going to be disgusted if we start gerrymandering and ripping up this map and making decisions based upon our political futures. That's not going to stand for any of us. And the public will have something to say about that. And I think we've got to be really careful about that. The fact is that Councilman Kendrick and Councilman Colosio are both in Fletcher Hills. Fletcher Hills is the oldest community in this community. It's one of the most famous communities in the entire region. And we're going to split it up because those two guys don't want to fight against each other in an election. And I think it's a bad decision. All right, I'll move on. I'll leave it on the floor.
Even though you said that really isn't what happened. The maps that we submitted met every single one of the criteria. It all touched downtown. It had contiguous lines. It kept communities of interest more or less together. But all that doesn't take precedent over the equal population split of a 10% deviation, which we took into consideration when we made them, keeping in mind that the census was done in 2010, and in 2020 the new census will come out. Given the dynamic in Fletcher Hills with respect to the airport or future developments, that all was taken into consideration too. So I don't know. I don't know what the gratuitous claims were, but you're entitled to your own opinion.
Well, I want to ask you. You were at one of these meetings, and you said, you rose your hand and said Fletcher Hills should not be broken up. You went on television and said Fletcher Hills should not be broken up. Now you've changed your mind. Why is that?
I think that once I learned about what the law was as opposed to how people felt these lines should be drawn, because those are two completely separate things, I came up with a legal conclusion as opposed to one that was off the cuff. And I presume you're talking about the workshops that I attended?
Yeah.
I attended all of them.
You know, it's funny. I have a doctorate, and it's not in law, so I don't make legal. I don't tell people what's legal, what's not. I rely on experts. I rely on our counsel. I rely on the consultants. So, well, I want to understand the question. So what I'm hearing, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is you're saying that any map that separates or that doesn't separate you and Councilman Kendrick is going to fail in the court.
Fail in court?
It's okay. It's illegal. How do you?
Oh, okay.
Is that your contention?
Yeah, and I can point to a case law where this happened.
Well, rather than I hear case law, let's talk to a lawyer.
Sure.
I'd like to ask our attorney. Mr. Attorney, if you wouldn't mind weighing in, we've got a disagreement about the law.
As Mr. Johnson mentioned, the one criteria that you don't want to deviate very much, he said, I think 5% is population. And that's because you don't want to have one district loaded with a number of voters and make a smaller district with a smaller number of voters, a disproportionate number of voters. But that's not the only criteria that's out there. We've discussed this before, and this goes all the way back to when we started this process, and that is what the community needs to have in order to provide the ability for the votes to be effective, in essence. And that dealt with all those factors that he's already described. It's in the agenda report: neighborhoods, types of residences, voting numbers, and those that go to the poll, and those sorts of things. There are all kinds of different socioeconomic criteria. So, if Mr. Colascio's position is the only criteria that's safe, and setting aside and disregarding all the rest of those, as long as you have equal population, then you're going to be creating safe districts, I disagree with that. If he's saying that it's one of the most important criteria, yes, population is a very important criteria, but it does not create the situation where it should dictate just simply by drawing lines, because you're going to have 25% of the voters here, 25 here, and 25 here, and 25 here.
So as an attorney, would you advise against us pushing forward some of the maps that our consultant suggested, such as P Circle 1, the orange map, the S. Davidson map, the S. Adler map? Are you concerned that those maps are somehow, quote-unquote, illegal?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I haven't looked at the maps until this evening. I haven't been a part of selecting the maps. I haven't been a part of going through any of that. That's been left with our consultants. And part of this process will allow me a chance to take whatever maps you as a council decide we should go forward and look through those as well, and look at the demographics for each of those maps, and then help you and guide you in your decision making.
So I'm going to ask your opinion. As my counsel, would you say that it's safe for me to take the recommendations of our pay consultant, or do you think that's risky?
No, I think it's safe, and I think, in all fairness, Mr. Johnson has said that all the maps that were presented could be proceed forward.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is not the entirety of all the maps. The issue is the contention that only the maps of Fletcher Hills are legal, and our consultant is saying that's not true, and you think I'm safe in believing what the consultant has said to me?
Well, I think what our consultant said is that the better approach is a united West. I believe he indicated at the beginning of the talk that he felt that there weren't any maps with a divided West that were being presented as a recommendation.
Okay. Anybody else?
Oh, there was one. The green map, I guess, was
The green.
had divided west, so.
Anybody else? Okay, so let's see what we can agree on. Would this council agree that we should narrow this number down to 5? Because I have a feeling if we start just throwing out everybody's idea, we could be at the same situation next week that we are today. So, can we get agreement that 5, or is there another number that you like that we should narrow down to?
Yeah, I think 5 is okay.
Anybody else have any objections to narrow it down to 5?
I think we can try for 5. See how it goes.
All right. I think we should vote on each. I think if you want a map, that you should make a motion, get a second, and vote on the map, and then we'll put it on the list. Since there are 5 of us, I think we all start with 1 and see if we can go from there. So I would like to start with the Peace Circle map. Make a motion that we adopt that. And adopting that doesn't mean that we decide on that map, but that we push it forward to the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Please vote.
The motion carries by a vote of 3-2 with Councilmember Colascio and McClellan voting no.
Gary?
Mine will be E. Cook 1.
And under the discussion, I have to again very strongly say that it would be political gamesmanship to vote for this map. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please vote.
One other comment before we get started.
Yeah.
For the people that are concerned about District 3 in this map, the mayor lives in District 3, which is highly apartments and things like that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the mayor gets voted for at large. So.
I understand that, but you live in that area.
But I do live in the heart of the city. Yeah. Okay, so it's moved and seconded. Please vote.
The motion carries by a vote of 3-2 with Councilmember Goebel and Mayor Wells voting no.
Bob.
Well, I said that I liked another one too, which was I've already voted for 1, but I would vote for R. Becker 1 also.
Is there a second for R. Becker 1?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Please
I need
vote.
a second to find that map.
Yeah, you
Sorry.
need to take a moment. Take your time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, please vote.
The motion fails with 3 votes no and 2 votes yes.
Mr. Colascio?
Green map. NDC green.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote.
Mr. Mayor, will you try your button again,
Sorry,
please?
I thought I voted.
The motion carries by a vote of 3-2 with Councilmember Goebel voting no and Mayor Wells voting no.
Mr. Goebel?
I am voting for B. Johnson 1, but there's some little things that need to be fixed about it. I think we can still potentially address that, Mr. Attorney, that some concerns that the consultant had about individual minor things. So I, based on my data, I vote for B. Johnson 1.
I'll second you. Please vote.
The motion carries by a vote of 3-2 with Councilmember Colascio and McClellan voting no.
So we're at 4. We said 5. At the luck of the draw, it brings it back to me. And I'm going to suggest that we vote for the orange map, the NDC orange map. Is there a second?
I need to look at that one.
Do you have that, Bill? That's right there. There it is up there.
Okay.
Was there a second? Nope.
Not yet.
I'll second the orange map.
All right, please vote.
The motion fails by a vote of 3 votes no and 2 votes yes.
Gary? You're next.
We don't have, we were just doing our 5?
We're at 4.
Okay.
Unless you
Oh,
want to
that's
leave it
right.
at 4. We can also make a motion to leave it at 4 if you'd rather.
Okay. I'm okay where we are.
You're making a motion then?
Yes.
Go ahead.
We leave it at 4, unless one of my other council members
How about
wants to add
NDC
one.
green? Oh, you already got that. Okay.
I'll second his motion.
You want to say what maps come in? So everybody's clear.
Yeah, let's.
No, the motion was to limit it to 4 maps.
Bob was asking which 4?
Let's review that.
The 4 that won the vote.
The current maps are Serco, Cook, Green, and B. Johnson.
Thank you.
Did you make the motion, Jim?
Okay, well, I don't have another one that I'm interested in. I just want to make sure that the other council members, if there are any others that they want.
I have another one I'm interested in.
If Gary, you want to give up yours?
Yes.
Fine, Mr. Goebel, go ahead.
Based on the data that I used and the things that I spoke earlier, the T. Brumfield map.
Can you put the map up there, please? Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I'll second that. Please vote.
Councilmember Kendrick, would you try your button again, please? The motion carries by a vote of 3-2 with Councilmember Colascio and McClellan voting no.
Okay, we have got our 5 maps. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue this discussion at our next council meeting. I hope that you all come and voice your opinion. I got to tell you, this was, to me, a really exciting and positive council meeting. This is what democracy is all about. You know, we have different opinions and different ideas, and we're hashing it all out. Sometimes we're fighting it all out, but that's okay. And I thank you all for taking the time to come here tonight. I thank you all for taking the time to fill out maps and to make your voice heard. And thank you for being part of the democratic process. We are now adjourned. The adjourned regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency held this 9th day of May 2017 is adjourned until Tuesday, May 23rd, 2017 at 3 o'clock p.m.